Kia koutou. We're Access here, and we're going to talk about how we found the experience of this legal design hackathon. So, what stood out for you, starting at this end?
Hey guys, again I'm Pauline and I go to AUT, I do UX design there, and when I saw this event I had no idea what I was going to walk into, not knowing anything about legal practice, haven't been able to work with developers as well, because as university students we tend to stick to our own kind and just be stuck in our own little bubble in front of our laptops and just designing away. And so it was a good opportunity for me to step out of my comfort zone and work in a team, because when you graduate, the reality is that you're going to have to work with different people who have different personalities. So again, yeah, I really enjoyed the kaitiaki assessment, because throughout these 2 days, I didn't just learn from the event and from other awesome people, but I also learned a lot about myself and how I tend to work with other people. So overall, it's just amazing experience. Would do it again.
Hi, I'm Ivy. I'm actually a law student, so for me I found this really interesting because I think as students we're so caught up in, or especially as a law student, in what the law is and trying to interpret it and how it's followed. So for me it was hard to step back and realise the overall goal of creating something, having that prototype, because I was coming up with solutions that weren't very tangible or we couldn't really create a prototype of. So I found that interesting to really get my head around, especially the design process, and I really enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm an academic, a law academic, but I try not to do any law, so our project was really good because we didn't concentrate on the law. This is the third hackathon I've been on, but it's the first one that's been facilitated, and it was really, really good because I wished I'd sort of done all this the first time. I would have got a lot more out of it.
Yeah, so I'm James. I'm a policy advisor, and I trained and qualified as a lawyer. And I'd second that point. So I really like doing the design process. I think that compared with other hackathons, it made it more focused on actual human needs and coming back to a group of people with a real need. It also meant that we knew we were going to come up with a prototype, and that can be a bit uncertain, and it helped us stage the process. I'd also second some of the feedback. Like, I think there was a couple of points where it would have been really helpful to have some milestones around that. Like, if you're going to do research on what's out there, this would be a good part of the process to do it. We're going to be user testing. You could do some setup for that earlier on in the process and plan to catch that later on. So those would be my main things, but I really, really appreciated it.
Hi, I'm Rowan. I'm a developer. This is my first hackathon. A couple of things that really stood out for me was that how receptive people are to talking about things which pain them, and how excited they get when you begin to work on a solution. Even in the very early stages, we've had so much feedback, and it's still coming in now. My phone's been pinging away. The other thing, the personal learning thing for me is it's just as important to think small as it is to think big. We started with quite a big sort of scope of what we were wanting to achieve in these 2 short days, and we repeatedly had to cut it down and cut it down and cut it down so it was just like a few things that we could deliver. And I guess it's really important for me now to understand that by doing that, it doesn't wreck what you're working on. It's just like the first step, and you can always build all those things back in later.
Kia ora. We are Access here, and Ivy's going to take us through the first part of our presentation.
Hello everyone. So initially we discussed accessibility, and we looked at what are the issues arising from it currently, what are the barriers in place, what does it look like. Now, the problem that we initially came up with was that people can't join work in social situations because buildings are not physically accessible. Now, from those with the legal background, we did think about, well, aren't there laws in place? Because there should be. And we came to the conclusion that whether it is enforced, do people know about it, and
is it addressed as effectively as it probably should or could be?
So we thought in our group about what matters for access. And we came up with an initial how might we statement. So we were asking how might we reduce environmental disability barriers to people joining work and social situations. And then we went to talk with some people and listen to what people told us. Alex, would you like to speak to that?
So, as it says, details matter. So, one of us was sent this photograph, and we thought, yeah, that looks like an accessible toilet, fine. But the person who sent us, the question is, what's the problem? It turns out that, okay, well, there's nothing to sit on, there's no chair there, so it was useless for this person who's in a wheelchair. And we wouldn't have known that. And this was actually marketed as an accessible room for somebody. And the other thing was the height. The person couldn't actually use it properly. And so again, we just don't know these things. And also, the law does move very slowly. So these are all screenshots from Facebook Messenger. And we have a problem with, audible alarms. That's very well for us. But if you're deaf, be nothing. So you are meant to have, well, it's not actually a regulation yet, is it? No. So it's an issue. Actually, and the whole thing with this is that it's not just people that you say, oh, they've got a disability. All of us at some stage can have a disability. Or, that actually happens at my university, and this is a real issue, is people with noise-cancelling headphones. They can't hear the fire alarms.
So we're thinking about accessibility, and what we heard from people is that good information about accessibility is really hard to access. There are things that should be accessible, like a ramp, but it ends in steps. So, we moved to apply what we heard, and we updated our how might we statement. How might we reduce barriers to people with physical impairments being able to, and we addressed some of the concrete needs that we heard and some of the concrete situations to narrow down our scope and make sure we were addressing actual problems that real people told us they faced. So we came up with some collated categories of access needs, and we thought about that problem of good information being hard to access. We tested the idea of these categories with people, and then we got to the point of having a prototype.
So when we found out what our users needed, and we found out quickly that there were a lot of them, we thought of a way of, how we might show the user flow back to them. So the beginning of our prototype starts as a way of surveying the user on what they need, what they want. So what they need is maybe a restaurant or a hotel that is easier to access for someone with a vision or hearing impairment, and we also wanted to know where they're currently located so we could then come up with a list of hotels, restaurants, or cafes that are near to them that have different accessibility features like visual fire alarms and accessible toilets. And from this thing here, if you click on a cafe, and then this page here shows you the details about that specific cafe and also what it doesn't have. And we also thought of a way of creating a community for people with impairments that's, how do I say this? So by having a review system, they're able to give advice to people who are in the same situation as them so that they could avoid or go to places that are, that fit their needs basically. So by the community and for the community. And these are the reviews that users will see, and these are the meters that they could rate on, and that's what they would see again, and this is just a way for them to leave some reviews.
you're a disabled person or a person with accessibility needs. Well, before this prototype, you would actually have to go to the place physically to actually think about any of the issues that you might actually come into contact with when you visit there. By using this map, you can see I'm going to go to this cafe. Other people like me are going to this cafe, have been to the cafe before, and they've said that the accessibility was fine, you know, and these things that affect me, they say that it's absolutely okay by them. So it's almost like it just creates this predictability about, you know, if I want to go somewhere, I know what I'm getting beforehand. The prototype also gives you the ability to see what is the scale of the problem. All commercial buildings are supposed to be accessible by law. But there's a lot of, like I was with the people we talked to, they said that there are accessibility problems that they run into on a daily basis.